10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Well, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome. Good golly, Miss Molly. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the Cult Comedy Crew, where we take you on a ride through the quirkiest corners of pop culture. So hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and let's get started because it's Rutles o'clock, and the scene is here in Alberta, not Flushing. I am your host of no fixed ability, that 70s rock fan, and today we're going to dive deep into one of the most famous fake bands of all time, the Pre-Fab Four, the Rutles, Dirk, Stig, Nasty, and Barry. We will be looking at the history of the band, and in particular their seminal mockumentary. Is that the word? All you need is cash. Welcome to my great friend as well, John Das Wolfen, who's joining me for this show today.
Yep, that's I like the Rutles. It was so I wasn't growing up, I wasn't a big Beatles fan. But I really liked the Rutles for some reason. I mean, I guess because it was poking fun at the Beatles a little bit, but musically I know it's not really Eric Idle and stuff doing it, but it is.
The music had a life of its own, as we're going to talk about. It lived beyond the 1 hour mockumentary, and there's been subsequent albums like Archaeology by Neil Innes and the crew. And whilst Eric didn't play anything, there was a core of guys who did: Neil, Ricky Fattar, John Halsey, and others. And I love the fact that the music took on a life of its own, as did, in fact, the whole ethos of the band. Fans filled in the gaps with backstory. They filled in the post story. It just took us, like all these best things, it takes on a life of its own, so. Yeah. But yeah, John, you're looking very svelte today, are you not?
Yeah, I'm short of a little bit of hair here.
We can see what a fine-looking chap you are. I'm drinking that substance today, of course, that most psychedelic of substances, tea.
Well, as long as it's not Indian tea, you'll be fine.
Well, it's English breakfast, so it's not the illicit stuff introduced to them by Arthur Salton, of course, the mystic from Surrey. But yes, tea is getting me in the mood. And I've got my psychedelic Beatles shirt, Ben Sherman shirt on. So the thing about this project, which had its roots way back, and we're going to talk about that. It combined, possibly for one of the few times, really, the cultural giants of the 20th century, the Pythons, Saturday Night Live, and the Beatles, all collided together to create this one little comedy music thing. And as well as the laughs, a lot of great music. Now, was it a tribute? Was it a parody? Was it satirical? Was it affectionate? Maybe it was all of those. And today we intend to find out, with the aid of the mystical substance, of course. So let's stop living in hope Let's be natural. Cue the laughs and welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us, everybody, in the chat that's already there. We are also up and live on Rumble as well as YouTube, and I'm keeping an eye on that chat too. We have the great D. Bud Martin, Super Wrench, of course. They call me Blue Suede Schubert, the king of the bop. Absolutely. And I do have a poll in the chat for a choice of 4 of the best rockers by the band. We have the choice of Blue Suede Schubert, Goose Step Mama, which they so famously performed at the Rutland Cavern, Get Up and Go, and Number One, 4 of their early rockers. So whichever of those you like, please go take part in that chat.
I'm kind of partial to Goose Step Mama myself. Goose
Step Mama just seems to encapsulate the early, raw, primitive Rutles, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Welcome to our great friend, Canadian Spider-Man. Good to see you, buddy. And forgive me, anybody, if I miss you. Eakley is here. Wonderful Eakley Thomas, and a great supporter of the channel. Our great friend, Christian Delorme. Good to see you, buddy. I showed a clip on Bourbon and Boarding the other night of some guy called Delorme beating the crap out of somebody. So maybe it was an ancestor of yours. I don't know. Way back in the day, so it could have been. Davina is here. It's not Darjeeling. Sorry, D-Bud. No, it's English breakfast. I can't get the illicit stuff here. It's on the banned list. Justin won't allow it. But the great Davina is here, who will obviously be keeping us right on a lot of the stuff. She was thinking of the Monkees. I didn't realize the Rutles started in 75. Yeah. Well, they actually had their genesis. The Rutles started them, but they had the history goes further back than that, which is, I find
74.
Well, in fact, I'm going to take us back in time to the 60s. Yeah. KR82 is here, and it's great that it's you and me, John, because with a big panel, this might not be quite as good. This is going to be an intimate little show. So Gilbert Delorme from the 80s Habs, yeah, he was Gilbert, not Gilbert, of course, Gilbert, kicking the crap out of somebody. Massgrave, thank you for being here. Never heard of these guys. I'm only in my mid-30s in my defense. Excited to hear about them. Well, the thing that excites me about it, apart from the fact I loved the music, was it was this, as I say, that great collision of cultural giants in the 20th century. Pythons, SNL, and the Beatles, all involved in the show to some degree. So,
well, they had icons and celebrities from that were big in the 70s then that we all know today, and even there might be a stray Beatle that shows up somewhere.
Absolutely, a stray Beatle and a few stray Beatle friends and a few people. Yep. And it was so well made because it incorporated real locations that were used in Beatles stuff and people that were actually in those Beatles things as shows like Tragical History Tour or whatever. So Cartoon Man 154, welcome to the show. Hi from the fair city of the Rutles. Now, I wonder if he's talking about the capital of Rutland, the smallest county in England, or is he talking about Liverpool? Because there was a bit of it started out as they were from Rutland, and they even referenced that at the beginning of the thing, and then they switch it to Liverpool immediately. So there was a bit of a jump there. They never quite explained the difference, but. And in Rutland, I've been in Rutland. I spent some time there, in fact, in an RAF station. But welcome to the show. Liverpool, yeah. It did end up in Liverpool, and they had real Liverpudlians in it. Right, so let's set the scene by playing a trailer. It's not really the trailer for the show. It's one I kind of knocked together myself, so I could make sure that the music was acceptable in length, and I got a few scenes I wanted. So let's take a little look at All You Need Is Cash.
Just how many people even remember the Rutles?
The Rutles. The Rutles.
The Rutles?
I don't know.
The Rutles.
Who were the Rutles?
I don't know.
People were proud in double back alley. Neighbors were loud. But ever so pally.
Love life. Who are the Rutles?
I don't know.
Get up and
is it really the Rutles? It might be somebody else.
Out, don't be dirty. Out, please don't hurt me.
They're getting wet in a shower because basically we talked it over, Chastity and myself, and we came to the conclusion that civilization was nothing more than an effective sewage system.
Time goes by, as we all know, naturally. Let's be natural. Ever since the world began.
Do you think they'll ever get back together again?
I hope not.
My homemade trailer for All You Need Is Cash. Took me forever to do that. Hope you enjoyed that. And it does show some of the key elements in it. And holy, my good buddy Christian Delorme has super chatted $20. That's going to keep me in poutine for the rest of the week. If I ever would switch my proud French Canadian heritage, I would switch it to Scottish. Brian gives Scotland a great name. Well, thank you, buddy. Minus the sore back. Yeah. Sore back should only be associated to hot chicks. Cheers, buddy. Well, I could blame my wife, of course, my lovely wife. Thanks for that, my friend. Now, I normally would play you one of those wonderful Judas Priest-related clips, but I don't have them in this particular profile I'm using for the Cult Comedy Crew, so you're going to get something else. I think it'll be this.
It's still a stupid.
It's such a fine line between stupid and
Clever.
yeah,
It's just
clever.
a little turnabout.
Yet another mockumentary.
Another probably better known mockumentary, but did come after this one, but still beloved. If Spinal Tap were to be seen as the number one, I think the Rutles would be a great number two. But as they actually said to the bishop, if it's not Scottish, it's correct. Well, welcome to other people who have joined us. Thank you, Christian, my great friend. Lord Thoth is here. Good to see you, my friend. And Christopher Moonlight, our good buddy. Hey, Christopher. Hope your work passes quickly as a result of the show. And Davina is already pointing out Rutland is the tiniest county in England, which was part of the joke. So, and it's the happiest. And I've been there. It was a lovely little rural county. So let us proceed to talk about how did this wonderful, wonderful project come about. And we're going to go back to the 60s. And we're going to start with, the show is basically the brainchild of two guys, Eric Idle and Neil Innes. Neil loved to wear ducks in his head for some reason. And it was originally conceived as a one-off sketch. Let me just get that on the screen. There we go. I've got the right image now. One-off sketch, but it spawned the whole mockumentary movie and then a whole life of its own after. And as we will talk about, the show was not a big success in American television on first showing. A little bit more popular in the UK, and then it took off a life of its own. But way back in 1967, Eric Idle met Neil Innes, and both of them were involved in a television show called Do Not Adjust Your Set. And this was an ITV in Britain, ITV children's show, which was cute because they could get away with a lot of stuff that wasn't probably really for children, but, hide it under the covers of a children's show. And as you can see on screen, it featured three future Pythons, Michael Palin, Terry Jones, and Eric Idle, and also the great David Jason, who many will know from later shows like It's Only Fools and Horses and Open All Hours, became a beloved British television comedy actor. And Denise Coffey was the female representation on the show. They had to have one,
Yeah.
So this was Proto-Python in a way. 1967, between December 67, May 1969. Became like a little bit of a groundbreaking show. Now, the other Pythons, Graham Chapman and John Cleese, were very aware of the show and were watching it. They were on other stuff at the same time. And later on, Terry Gilliam joined this show too. So you had 4 Pythons involved. And they did some pretty wacky, crazy stuff for a kids' TV show. There is a lot of it still available on YouTube. You can see clips. But critically involved with the show, doing the regular music numbers, were the British comedy art pop group, the Bonzo Dog Doodah Band, later to be shortened to Bonzo Dog Band, led by Vivian Stanshall in the middle. But on the left of them there, you can see Neil Innes, who became a key member of that band. A lot of fluid members coming in and out. And they were a really weird group. They took elements of music hall, jazz, oldies, psychedelia, pop, and rock, and melded them together with a lot of performance art. And they were very silly, but very serial. So they suited this children's show very well. Did stuff like the Monster Mash and other songs like that. They had the craziest song titles, the Bonzos, if you ever look them up, and they took a lot of inspiration from old, copyright free at the time, 1920s records. And there's Neil with the duck on the head doing some Bonzo stuff. And they were familiar, though, to the Beatles in a few ways as well, because they appeared at the Savile Theatre in London, which Brian Epstein had rented out for concerts. So here they are appearing with Cream, and they did other gigs there as supporting act. And of course, the Beatles would go along to those shows to watch them because it was Brian's thing, Brian Epstein's thing. So on top of that, the Bonzos appeared in the Magical Mystery Tour movie. Here they are performing that well-known, beautiful ballad, Death Cab for Cutie, at the Paul Raymond Strip Club.
Which would later be the name of a band from the 2000s.
That's right, yeah. So Christopher is giving us some real great info here. The Bonzos were his dad's first roadie gig. That is incredibly cool, and I think some of the guys in the as a result of you and your lovely mother introduced me to in the Rock and Roll Rowdies, have also worked in and around those guys and knew them. So they had so you're already getting a confluence of Python, Beatles, and music, and Neil Innes through the Bonzos. And of course, the Bonzo Dog Doodah Band had a hit single, a couple, but this was the big one. It might even have been a hit in America, I'm not sure. I'm the Urban Spaceman, written and sang by Neil Innes, with Canyons of Your Mind on the B-side, which is a lovely track, called Psychedelia, and produced by a certain Paul McCartney under the nom de plume of Apollo C. Vermouth. So through doing this show, Innes and Idle became really good friends, very, very good friends. So when that show ended, Eric Idleoft went to join what became the Pythons and start those TV shows. And Neil Innes continued to do musical stuff. He was in a band, he formed a band called the Grims. See, he's got the duck theme again, Rock and Duck. And that band included guys like Mike McGeer, Paul McCartney's brother, and Roger McGough. And they were in a band called the Scaffold, Liverpool band. And also critically, Ollie Halsall, who later on did music with the Rutles, played a lot of guitar. And John Halsall was Halsall, who became Barry in the Rutles, was in this band for a while. And then Innes teamed up with the Pythons and became really good friends of those. And that, of course, that's comedy history that we could never get into the depths of that. But he did a lot of music for them on the albums and on TV, performed on some of the TV shows, and critically music for things like Holy Grail. You can see him there behind Eric, his buddy, as the chief minstrel. And this was the Bravely Sir Robin Ran Away song, which he wrote. Yeah. And he also did the Knights of the Round Table one in the castle, where they're all dancing on them. So Neil was a big part of the Pythons too. And if you listen to some of his stuff on their live stage performances, it's immortal. He's introduced as on one of the albums as Raymond Scum. And he utters the immortal line, "I've suffered from my music, now it's your turn." So comedy and music mingling. And you can see here another connection, of course, that became extremely important during the Python era was the George Harrison connection. So Eric and George became big friends. I think they even lived near each other, but they became super close. There's Terry Gilliam and Eric and George and Olivia, and that was another piece in the puzzle that led towards what became the Rutles. So, this isn't too dry.
If we go down the Python hole, that will probably be a couple, or if not 3 shows.
That would be a billion shows. So just before we've got a little bit more history to do, but our great friend Toxic Man Flu, who is one of the prime drivers behind me doing this cult comedy crew. He really kicked the idea off back in the day and tries to join us whenever he can. And he's super busy Mondays because of Monday Night Madness Meltdown. Later on tonight. So $2 from Toxic, thank you, buddy. The Bonzo Dog Doodah Band was awesome. They were, and there was a story behind it because they were actually the Bonzo Dog Dada Band, as in the surrealist Dada, but they got tired of explaining that to people, so they just changed it to Doodah, and people just seem to accept that. So let's have a little clip for you, my friend. This one, I think, suits you.
I'm not wearing any pants. Film at 11.
Thanks, Toxic, though, buddy. Good to see you. Hoping if you ever get the chance. Just a little idle discussion. Handmade films was indeed getting going by this time. I think the whole thing in 75, we're talking 75, 76 now, things were starting to coalesce with that. I think he'd had a role in propping up Holy Grail, but George got more heavily invested after that in film Handmade. I don't think Handmade were involved in the Rutles project per se, though. But anyway, so after the Python TV show broke up, Eric was pretty quick to get his own thing going, which Michael Palin praises him for. He said Eric was really got it together, and he had a great idea. He pitched to BBC Two, the cheaper of the two channels in the BBC, the idea of doing this really cheap show called Rutland Weekend Television, and it would be set in a fictional TV station set in the smallest county in England, so therefore it would be cheap by deliberately cheap, but also that suited the BBC because it was cheap to make. So he said it's just genius on Eric's part. He didn't muck about with grand ideas. Let's just get this thing going. And it was a similar to Python type thing. Oh, I know what I forgot. I've got a couple of video clips to play. Before we cover that, my apologies. This is a clip of the Bonzos on Do Not Adjust Your Set.
Hi there, nice to be with you. I'd like to introduce you to Legs Larry Smith, drums, and Michael Palin, garden rake. Come in David Clegg, bass guitar, and Neil Innes, piano. Hello, Rodney Ruskin Slater on tenor sax, and Roger Ruskin Spear on the alto sax. I'd like to introduce myself on trumpet. It's nothing. I'd like to introduce you now to David Jason on spoons, and Mr. Denise Coffey on tuba. Denise, that's nice. Hello, Eric Idle on temple bells. Hi, Eric. come in Terry Jones on toast. That's kind of groovy, Terry.
And that's an example of what you would get from the Bonzos. That's their famous intro-outro song, which if you listen to the recorded version, it is literally just an intro and then an outro. And there's no song in the middle, and they introduce people like Adolf Hitler and all sorts of other, on vibes. You know, it's that kind of thing. I absolutely love the Bonzos. I've got their anthology called Cornology. It's just madness, brilliant madness. Yeah, Rutles' first album is out of print. That's why I was lamenting that I had a copy and somebody nicked it over the years, disappeared, and now I just got it in digital. So we have a clip. We have another clip. Oh, yes. So, Rutland Weekend Television, let me go back to this. Eric's show, and Neil Innes was on it, a huge contributor, doing lots of musical numbers. He did like a John Lennon spoof, which, Rock and Roll Children, which became one of the Rutles songs with the title change. And I'm trying to remember the title. God, it'll come back to me. Anyway, so he was doing stuff like that on this show. But George Harrison appeared on it a couple of times as a pirate. So he once came on and did a song about pirates, and then he actually appeared on the Christmas special as a pirate. So the three, George, Eric, and Neil, all in the one thing. I'm going to show you George appearing on Rutland Weekend Television, if you will indulge me. It's a lot of fun. Here it is. It's George Harrison doing the pirate song.
It's a pirate's life for me. All my friends are pirates and they sail the BBC. I got a jolly rocket, it's a black and white and fast. So get out of your skull and crossbones and I'll run it off your mast.
You sail the BBC. Yeah, get out your skull and crossbones and run up your jolly mast. So George had a great sense of humor, but he also had that reputation as the dry, quiet one. But apparently, off screen, you couldn't shut him up, and he was a funny sense of humor. That was really funny, and I've always loved that clip. But yeah, so he was a big contributor to Rutland Weekend Television. So the ultimately had an idea. I mean, Innes was on the show a lot, and he also John Halsey, who later became Barry Wom, appeared. But one critical short sketch they did, and it's hard to find the sketch. I saw a copy of it in Vimeo, but it's not on any of the copies of Rutland Weekend Television you can download from YouTube. They did a sketch it was a Beatles pastiche, and it was they called themselves the Rutles from Rutland. The Rutland Stones was meant to be the original name, but they decided to change it to the Beatles and just the Rutles. And there's a short black and white spoof of A Hard Day's Night called I Must Be in Love. And it's slightly different lineup because a different gentleman was in the band. I can't, Dick Bennett or Dirk Bennett or something was his name. He didn't appear in the final setup, but so they did this cute little Hard Day's Night spoof and a different recording of the track that came to be used in All You Need Is Cash, but kind of got a good reception. Innes also appeared as Ron Nasty doing Good Times Roll. There's the song that eventually became for the Rutles. Eventually called, he's at the piano, he's got the little round glasses and whatever. So they had this Beatles spoof thing going on. And Gwen Taylor, who also appears in the Rutles movie, was a regular in the show. Doing stuff. She does Iris Mountbatten in the Rutles, and she does Chastity. But she was a regular on Rutland Weekend Television. It was quite a successful little show for Eric. And it got him, he was also a revolutionary in that he wanted to go out and make connections with other shows. And he went to America in 76 and hosted Saturday Night Live. And as a result of they showed the Beatles parody, the Rutles parody on the show, and they said they got a huge amount of feedback, phone calls and mail saying, that was brilliant. Can we see a bit more of that? So it got a big reception on SNL. But they introduced them on Rutland Weekend Television. Sorry, I had this. So Neil was the Lennon character. Eric was the Harris. Eric was playing the Harrison character at that point. David Batley was the McCartney, and John Halsey was the Ringo. And there were Dirk, Nasty, Stig, and Barry, but they used those names. And this is where we talked about briefly earlier that they were a product at this time of Rutland, but mysteriously, and all you need is cash, apart from the very opening, they get transferred to Liverpool. Because I think they said, well, the Americans won't have a clue where Rutland is, so, let's change that idea. But anyway, Eric goes to SNL. So he guest hosted that, played the sketch, it got a great reception, and again, he guest hosted in April 77, and Neil Innes also performed doing a song called Shangri-La, which later ended up as a Rutles song on archaeology. And they said, why don't we, Lorne Michaels said, why don't we make a movie, an hour-long TV movie about this fake band? And as Neil said, well, that was wonderful. But they said, you're going to start filming next week. And I had like 3 songs. So he had to write 20 songs in a week. But it was great because it was going to happen. And it was going to, because of the SNL connection, it was going to have SNL people in it. So the whole thing just fell into place. Gary Weiss came on board as the director, co-director with Eric. He'd done a lot of SNL movies and shorts and did music videos later and so on. Lovely guy, good, funny guy, good sense of humor. So the whole thing just fell into place because Eric going out there and putting himself out with the SNL guys. Of course, famously, as we all know, is there ad breaks appearing in the show? Shit, didn't know that, Darius. YouTube has changed something and they've put this ad break thing in live shows. I don't know if I can stop it. I will. I'll have to figure that out. So Lorne Michaels had done that whole $3,000 for the Beatles to reform as well, which was hilarious because somebody had offered them like 20 million to reform. So he goes on and goes, I have a check for $3,000 if you can get down to the studio here and reform. You can divide it however you like. You can give Ringo less if that's what you want. So they had that Beatles thing going. Now, famously, John and Paul were in John's apartment in New York watching this, and they thought about going down. In fact, there's a movie about it. I can't quite remember it. I've got a copy of it DVD. It was, what's the guy's name? It'll come back to me. Anyway, the movie was Jared Harris played John Lennon in it, and they were debating going down, and they didn't in the end. But George, of course, did appear. And he said, I want my money. I'm here. I want the check. Well, it's only you. You can't get the money. The others have to be here too. That's a bit chintzy, So that is how the whole thing came about. SNL got on board. And I didn't know this, but they had that hiatus thing during the summer. So they would go off on summer hiatus, and they had to fill that time slot NBC with stuff. And they did little mockumentaries or whatever, and one of them was going to be the Rutles. So thank you to our great friend Darius Munchausen, who is always welcome on the panel, of course. Hans doing the sign of the horns with sprinkles around. Thank you, my friend, for that $3. Keeps the lights on here. We'll have to give you a little clip of some kind as well. You're probably thinking this.
Get on with it. Yes, get on with it.
Get on with it. So that's how it basically all came together. And George got in touch with Neil Aspinall at Apple. Neil was running Apple by then. He was one of the original Beatles roadie back in the day. Eventually became the leader of runner of Apple, and he'd been working on what was called at the time the Long and Winding Road, which was going to be a definitive story of the Beatles. All of them had signed on to it. And this is back in 77. All of them had signed on, including John. And he gave an early cut of that to Eric and Neil and said, can this if this helps you, use this as a template, and you can take the stock footage out of it and some of the other footage and use it in your show. Now that eventually became Anthology. That's the basis of what became Anthology long after John had died. But it's sad to think that John had signed on to that project and they were already making it back in 77. Now the title changed because George didn't like The Long and Winding Road because it was a Paul song, so he objected. $750 for George was what they got. Yeah, so that's how it all kind of came about, and I just find that fascinating that these groups, who we all now know as these cultural icons, came together to make this little spoof idea about a fake band, but taking a Beatles story that wasn't necessarily that well known yet. I mean, Anthology wasn't out. There had been a documentary called The Complete Beatles, which is probably the closest to this in reality. I think Malcolm McDowell had narrated it, and they used some real footage in it, footage they were allowed to use, and that was the closest thing to it at the time. It mirrored this to a certain extent. So maybe one of the downfalls of it in the end was that people didn't know what they were joking about with the Hamburg thing and all the other stuff. But anyway, yeah, pause for breath. Hopefully not an advert appearing while we do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's take so this led up to what people call the Rutles, but really was called All You Need Is Cash, was the title of the mockumentary. Neil went off and wrote a bunch of songs. He got a band together to make this thing, and that's what we're going to take a look at now. Is those people? Here we go. So let me just I can get rid of this piece of paper. I'm surrounded by paper when I'm doing these things. Yeah, there we go. That's what I'm looking for. So let me show that in the stream. So here's a great picture of the Rutles in Hamburg, looking just like the Beatles in Hamburg. If you see those pictures, Neil said that when making the music, they didn't necessarily use the same instruments or whatever, but when they did this, they made sure it looked exactly like it did at the time. And it's spooky because they even had the same poses as those photos of the Beatles in Hamburg. So obviously the band, well, we had Dirk McQuickley, played by Eric Idle, Sir James Dirk McQuickley, CHMBE, as he would be known today. Famously was the first Rutle to admit to drinking tea.
Yeah, they were knighted by a Queen of England.
The A Queen of England, not the Queen of England, but a Queen of England. Just, and he said about the tea, it's not up to me. If you come to me and ask me, I'm going to tell you the truth, because it is the truth. I've had tea, lots of tea, Indian tea, and biscuits. So he was the first one to break that drug thing around the Rutles. His wife Martini, there's Eric, of course, in full stage show regalia. His wife Martini was played by Bianca Jagger. She was a French actress who spoke no English and precious little French, apparently. Bianca Jagger playing the part. But Idle also played, the narrator of the show, the interviewer, and he also famously played Stanley J. Cramerhead III Jr., the musicologist from the University of Please Yourself, California. So Eric's all over this in various places. Now, he was not meant to be in the band originally. Ollie Halsall was meant to play the musician, a British musician, was meant to play Dirk. that Lorne Michaels insisted, you got to be in it, Eric, because you're the guy we're selling this now. So he took over the Dirk McQuickley role, even though he didn't sing or play on any of it in the studio. Not that he can't play music, but it wasn't his thing. Here's a great Dirk McQuickley action figure. Homemade, I think, but it's still pretty cool.
Wow.
And then, of course, the other main driver of the band was Ron Nasty, played by Neil Innes, English singer, songwriter, musician, prophet, babysitter, and lunch activist, which stemmed from a lifelong love of peas. And obviously he's the nasty one because that's his name, Ron Nasty, played by the wonderful, wonderful Neil Innes. And I should at this point, I wish to pause. I don't want to bring anything down, but I wish to pause and say R.I.P. to Neil Innes, who passed away in 2019. So rest in peace, Neil. I'm a huge fan, or I was a huge fan of all your stuff you did, from the Bonzos through the Pythons, up through the Rutles and beyond. Rest in peace, buddy. Thanks for all the laughs and all the great songs. And I've got a couple little tribute clips we'll play of you later on. Hell, John, would it bring things down if I played one now?
No, I don't think it would.
Okay, so here's a little tribute to Neil Innes, not long before his death.
Time goes by, as we all know, naturally. People come and people go, naturally. Let's be natural. Ever since the world began, let's be natural. Every woman, every man, let's be natural. Has followed nature's plan, let's be natural. Yeah. How to do.
Yeah, beautiful. R.I.P. Neil. That's courtesy of the San Diego Tribune, I should mention. That's a clip from an interview they did with him not long before he died, when he was trying to get the US Rutles tour going in 2019. I am just about to take this off. There we go. So beautiful little tribute to Neil. Sadly missed. Yeah, and of course Ron wrote books like Out of Me Head. A book. He wrote a book. It's an in-joke there. Book. That's my... they were mocking me for the way I say book on Meadless. Book. It's a book. That was beautiful music, Davina. You're right, yeah. And then the next member of the band is Barry Wom, played by John Halsey, an actual drummer. Barry Wom, Sir Barrington Womble, MBE, drummer, singer, pub landlord, and hairdresser. He didn't just have the ambition to be one hairdresser, he wanted to be two, according to the movie. He's got 2 fully equipped salons of his own and gives mop-top haircuts to fans and customers alike every year. So, and there he is doing his cigarette trick. And there he's behind an actual drum kit because he is a real live drummer. The final official member of the band, Ricky Fattar, the George Harrigan, sorry, get to the piece, Harrigan. Stig O'Hara, MBE, is described as a school leaver of no fixed hairstyle and a retired musician, singer, and air hostess for Air India. Married to, in real life, Ricky Fattar is married to Penelope Tree, famed English model from the 60s, and you see her in the movie with him, going to Bangor and going to the mystical thing in the train, and she's there with him. She's real, and she was a friend of Jane Asher, who Paul McCartney dated. So there's more connections there. Ricky, of course, was famously the drummer for many years in the Beach Boys, which meant that the Rutles band that made the music ended up as 2 drummers and 2 guitarists, which is a really weird lineup. But basically, the guitarist just multi-instrument. Ricky's a multi-instrumentalist, as is the 5th Rutle, Lepo. Who you can
he
see.
mostly just stood around looking cool, though.
Yeah, Lepo was, he didn't play an instrument except for bass guitar and vibraphone, but he did know how to have a good time, which was very important in Hamburg. However, in reality, Lepo was meant to be played on screen, and his music was played by a guy called Ollie Halsall, who actually sang and played bass on all of the Eric Idle stuff, and he did the vocals for all the Eric Idle stuff. Famed amongst British musicians for being one of the greatest unsung guitar heroes in Britain. Played on Neil Innes's stuff like How Sweet It Is to Be an Idiot. He had various bands like Pato in the 70s, like progressive rock bands. Fabulous musician, could play anything. He certainly got involved in the music. He was a bit miffed that he got shoved aside for playing the part on screen of Dirk, so they made up the Lepo part and just showed him in a picture or 2. And he also sadly passed away in 1994. So R.I.P. to Peter Ollie Halsall, who played Lepo. And he laid down so many tracks that they were able to use stuff on our Archaeology later. It's kind of like the John Lennon scenario. So, but yeah, R.I.P. to him. Wonderful guitar player. You can check out a lot of his stuff on YouTube. One of these unsung guys that should have got more credit in his lifetime. But he does a wonderful job on the music of the Rutles. Apparently, though, Lepo got lost in Hamburg. He entered a closet with a diminutive German lady of the night and was never seen again. So he's still there somewhere, I guess. So that was kind of on the music side of the band, and like the 5th housemate and the young ones. Yeah, I think we have someone has generously. Toxic Man Flu again, keeping me in tea. $5 from Toxic Man Flu 70s. Is there a Rutles Buke still in print? Well, there is a Buke, and I'm going to rebuke you for continuing that joke. Yeah, thanks, buddy. And this will never go away. The whole book thing will never go away until I use it so often that people get sick of it. So let's have a little clip for Toxic. This one suits him.
She did it. She blowed up. She blowed up good. She really did it. She blowed up good. Blowed up real good.
One of my favorites. Thank you, Toxic. Love you, brother. Who we got? We got Taylor Swift Greater Than Disney has joined us. Great to see you on the stream and waving turquoise waving person. I know it's Lepo, the unknown Marx brother. That's true, and that's possibly why they took that name. The Lepo was one of the Marx brothers. Flock of Seagulls was inspired by Barry Wom. Because Ringo, the whole thing was very spot on, because Ringo did say he wanted to be a hairdresser if he wasn't in a band. So in terms of the cast, well, we had the wonderful Eric Manchester, played by Michael Palin, parody of Beatles press agent Derek Taylor. Here with a somewhat unknown guy next to him on the left. I'm not sure who that guy is. It looks vaguely like George Harrison. And somebody stealing things from Ruttlecore at the background. Also, yeah, I love this outfit, because that's how Derek Taylor dressed. I mean, they were spot on. Beatles press agent for many years. We had the involvement of the SNL guys. So John Belushi famously parodied Alan Klein, who really was feared in real life, Stones manager, and then muscled his way in to become the Beatles manager. Ron DeCline, the most feared promoter in the world. He had a reputation as a hard man, but his only weak spot was dishonesty. He struck terror into the hearts of his subordinates to the point where people would commit suicide rather than meet him. His business left hand never knew what his right hand was doing. Nasty adored him because he was a man after his own wallet. So, and at this point, I think it's only fair to play a clip. One of my favorite clips from the documentary is this one.
You ask me, where's the money? Where's the money? I mean, I don't know where the money is. I've never been good with figures, you know that. I don't know anything about math. It was never my good subject. I don't know where the money is, but if you need money, I'll give you money. But this really surprises me. I'm really shocked. Because I thought we had something here a lot stronger than just business. I mean, you know, I love you more than I love my own family. I do. I want to protect you. I want to help you. I want to protect you from the outside world. Protect you from people like me, you know. And I think I'm doing a good job.
I just love that he's talking to himself. And that's so on the nose. That was Alan Klein to a T, absolutely to a T. Love it. And you can see him going in here. Al Franken is one of those guys, so we won't talk about that. But, and then, of course, there was Brian Thigh playing the ex-record executive who turned the Beatles down, the Rutles down, based on Dick Rowe, who turned the Beatles down, which is a thing that actually happened. So we got that clip.
Brian Thigh was a top record executive in London in 1962. Mr. Thigh, you've been known for many, many years as the man who turned down the Rutles.
Yeah, that's right.
You said that guitar groups were on their way out and would never make any money at all in the 60s.
Yes, I did.
You turned your back on all those millions of sales, all those hundreds of gold records.
Yeah, that's right.
What's it like to be such an asshole?
I love that. Just love that. They really used those guys well. They were only, the SNL guys were just in little bits of it, but they used them perfectly, I think. Because that's, Dick Rowe said that when he turned the Beatles down in favor of the tremolos. Oh, groups with guitars are on the way out. He signed the Stones later, though. He wasn't going to make the same mistake twice. I actually forgot to play this little clip of Eric.
From these streets, very close to the cavern Rutland, came the fabulous Rutland sound, created by the Pre-Fab Four, Dirk, Nasty, Stig and Barry, who created a musical legend that will last a lunch.
Yeah, so he did that stuff. Well, he was always running away from the camera or something was going to hit him. I forgot to go to the chat. My great friend Christian Delorme will not be outdone by a bug. He's toxic. He's talking about Canadian $7.50 from Christian Super Chat. Thank you, my friend. I will not be outdone by a bug. Well, what are we going to play for you? We'll play some Rutles for you, I think. We should play some Rutles for you. If I could find the damn clip. You know what? We'll play something.
What kind of music do you usually have here?
Oh, we got both kinds. We got country and western.
So it's Belushi and Aykroyd. So it's close enough. Thank you, Christian. You're a great supporter of the channel. Really appreciate it. I hope everyone's having a good time out there as we work through these little clips and whatever. Mistakes were made, yes. How does it feel to be such an asshole? There was actually a longer cut of that where he really gets laid into him and uses all sorts of stuff. And Aykroyd shoots himself at the end of it. I think they felt that was a little too much. The subplots are brilliant. Yeah, but again, it's on the nose for what actually happened in reality to the Beatles. Yeah, so I think. Oh yeah, so this. The next one, I don't have a clip for this but it's Bill Murray. Very spot on played Bill Murray the K. They didn't even have to change it much. who styled himself the fifth Beatle when the Beatles came to town and just went nuts on the radio about it. And then I love the fact that Bill Murray, who ad-libbed it all, was like, the scene is here in Flushing. It's like Flushing. Well, I guess they play tennis there, isn't that where the tennis championships are? Flushing, over in Queens. He just went nuts with it, and it's because Bill Murray the K, it's perfect. Loved that. And some of the others, Leggy Mountbatten, who's the parody of Brian Epstein, played by Terence Baylor, a retail chemist from Bolton, a Rutles manager. He hated their music, but he loved their trousers. And shockingly left the Rutles' lives suddenly to their shock by accepting a teaching post in Australia. Terrible stuff. He also managed, of course, the French Beach Boys, Les Garçons de la Plage. One of my favourite records is by them. It's the Baby S'il vous plaît, which I think appeals on archaeology. It's strangely sung by someone that sounds like Wrong Nasty, but and of course his mother Iris was a big part of the documentary, played by Gwen Taylor, telling us all about why he got into
the hair and the presents, the music.
He liked it?
No, he hated it.
Well, what did he like?
Well, the trousers.
What about their trousers?
Well, they were very tight.
Tight?
Yes, you could see quite clearly.
Oh, I see.
Everything. Outlines. Clear as day.
Yes, thank you. Yes. So, tight trousers and
nothing
noise.
left to the imagination.
And I mean, it's pretty on the nose because Brian was not that it was something they could talk about a lot of the time, but he was gay, and I think there was a certain attraction when they went to see the Beatles in the cavern with the leather trousers and everything, and that parodies that perfectly. But Leggy, of course, as we say, did manage other bands. It wasn't just the Rutles.
Of course, he had other artistes, the Machismo brothers, Arthur Hodgson and the Kneecaps, as well as the French Beach Boys, Les Garçons de la Plage.
California Boys. I love that. California Boys. Anyway, I hope you're enjoying these clips, everybody. I'll probably get stoned to death by YouTube for playing them. I spent a lot of time clipping some of these in my favourite moments. We haven't even got to the stills from the movie yet. But yeah, to continue to go through, Gwen Taylor plays that part and then famously plays Chastity. Possibly one of the funniest people in it, although she doesn't say anything. She's a vicious parody of a certain somebody, and she hooks up with Ron Nasty. Her father invented World War II, and she was a musician, destructo artist, and screamer. And her pieces in this are brief but effective, and this is when she's introduced.
Nasty, meanwhile, visited an exhibition of broken art at the Pretentious Gallery, Soho. The art exhibits had all been dropped out of tall buildings and then put on display. Amongst the little piles of rubble, Nasty found the artist herself, Chastity, a simple German girl whose father had invented World War II. Chastity fascinated him with her destructo art. They talked all through the night as she outlined her plans to drop artists out of planes. Nasty adored her. They announced their engagement next day at a press conference held in his shower.
What are you doing this for? We're doing this for peace and basically to show that the world is, going astray in its thinking.
What are you doing?
We are getting wet in a shower because basically we talked it over, Chastity and myself, and we came to the conclusion that civilization was nothing more than an effective sewage system. And so by the use of plumbing, we hope to demonstrate this to the world.
thereby parodying John and Yoko's bed-ins and bath-ins and whatever. But I just love that effective sewage system. And they ad-libbed all that. They just Neil made it up on the spot, basically. So it's cleverly done with chastity. And this is Gwen Taylor on Rutland Weekend Television. So I don't know. What can you say? Right. So I'm going to just hide that on the stream for now. So there's a couple of clips I'll say for later, but I think before I'm going to show some stills from All You Need Is Cash, because really we've come to the point where that's the main focus. That's everybody that's in it. There are some other cameos, but we'll get to those later. But I wanted before that to play a montage of the songs, albeit it's the songs from All You Need Is Cash. I haven't covered any archaeology stuff. Those songs live on their own and they're great, but there's not so many videos for those. So here's a little collection of some of the songs we're about to see.
I didn't need a shove. Now that we are through, you're my number one. You're my second to none. Number one. Two hearts of one between us. Nothing can come between us. Whatever will get like you. With a girl like you. Off your shoes, I'll find more. I'm living in home, living in home, living in home, living in home. Yes, I'm living in home, living in home. Out, don't desert me. Out, please don't hurt me. Out, it's looking good. It's looking good. It's looking good. It's looking good. It's looking good.
I wanted to include the dung at the end, which is the spoof of the long chord, of course, at the end of a day in the life. But the songs were so on the nose that Neil Innes was sued by ATV Music, who owned the Beatles catalogue, and he ended up having to give them 50% of the royalties. Fair enough, but they're so beautifully done. If you listen to the whole album, that Rutles album that came out after this, so beautifully done. So so I love that there's just such great songs in there. Don't forget, in the chat there is a poll, 22 votes in it, but there are more than 22 people watching, I think. Go vote in that poll for your favorite Rutles early rocker. And please, I so thank you to everyone for being here. Please click that like button and share it out and all that good stuff if you're having a good time. And that's what it's all about. So, John, are you having a good time?
Oh, I'm having a great time.
Cool. Larry's mentioned the line in Piggy in the Middle from Tragical History Tour is, instead of cuckoo cuckoo, it's doo-doo a poo. And the lyrics, if you listen to them closely and read them, there's some really funny stuff. Blue Suede Schubert, I didn't have a clip of them performing that, unfortunately. So, hey, there's always somebody throwing muck from the rafters, isn't there? That D. Bud Martin, maybe the greatest wrench since wrenches were invented. But, what a pest. Just kidding, mate. Sorry I didn't have them, that one. But there were some tracks they had to leave off the album because they were just too close. But anyway, I want to bring up some stills from the, not a huge number because we've looked at a lot of stuff already, but we'll go through All You Need Is Cash a little bit just to comment on it as we go through. And I think it's this one here. There we go. Press play, I guess, would help. So, only an hour long, they successfully wove in an awful lot of this stock footage and carefully placed the Rutles in various bits. In the beginning, you got them coming out the nose of this aircraft and jumping down, and then doing the whole, like Hard Day's Night, going through multiple vehicles to escape. So those who'd never seen that footage back in the day, this might have just seemed like wacky, but they didn't really get it. That it mirrors the actual Hard Day's Night stuff.
Yep.
And Eric coming in, of course, with always run the camera. This was a running gag. The camera.
Yeah. Always running towards the camera because it's always running away from him.
Yeah. And then you show them, they had the section where they show various clips of the music before returning to it later. Now, the Tragical History tour stuff's very interesting because they filmed it at exactly the same place that they filmed I Am the Walrus. They used the same coach. And obviously, the premise was different. It's 4 history professors from Oxford, Tragical History tour. 2 of the policemen at the back on the wall were 2 of the original actors that did it in the original. And one thing that happened was that you'll see it in the video of it in the movie. A glider plane goes right over their heads. Mm-hmm. Apparently, that was so close they could feel it, and it wasn't meant to be that close. It scared the shit out of them. So, and then there's the walking down the steps scene, which is, of course, in Magical History too. And I love the I Must Be in Love, which was a hit single in the US and the UK. Not a big one, but made sort of top 30, top 40. One of the most effective Beatles pastiches ever as a tune. And all that, the guitar work was all Ollie Halsall. This is now, that woman is Jeanette Charles, and she played the Queen for years in movies. I think she might even be in Naked Gun.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think it's her. She played the Queen very successfully. She must be out of a job now, of course. But now this whole Barry Wom sequence is shown again later, where he ends up marrying the wrong woman, and then he makes the solo signal. His wife ends up with some Scotsman from Hull, which is weird with the kilts. And he made the single, when the girl of your dreams marries some Scotsman from Hull. He ended up with a tall, leggy blonde. So I think there's Penelope Tree, real life Ricky Fattar wife. And then you start to see the cameos: Paul Simon, Mick Jagger.
Ron Wood's on it later on as a Hell's Angel member.
He's a biker, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, that little clip, the last clip of Eric Idle, I've actually got a little video of it. It's about the first meeting of Dirk and Nasty. I've actually been to where John and Paul first met. I stood in that very spot. It's because I'm a big Beatles fan. But anyway, this is an amusing little comment at the end of this.
For on this very spot, Ron Nasty and Dirk McQuickley first bumped into each other. At this precise point, just a few feet back here, Ron Nasty invited Dirk to help him stand up. Dirk, merely an amateur drinker.
Merely an amateur drinker. Just one of those little lines, throwaway lines, that I absolutely love. And then it shows them in the early cavern stuff. Goose Step Mama is the one they're playing there. And it's very effectively done. And they use the cavern as it is now because it was stupidly demolished by Liverpool City Council to build a subway that never happened. And then they had to rebuild rebuild it from bits that were still left. So the original the Cavern in Liverpool now is great, but it's not quite the original. It's in the same place. But and then they introduced Leggy, of course, with the trousers. I don't know what was going on with the haircut here, but and the whole trousers sequence, which is just hilarious. And then to the famous Reaper band, where the Beatles, of course, did become the band they were intended to be. And this, we have a little sequence for that too.
This is where they found themselves, far from home and far from talented.
Far from talented. And it mirrors the real life thing where the Beatles went to Hamburg and they were really a rotten band at the time. They had Pete Best on drums and Stu Sutcliffe was on bass, and they were terrible. But because they played all those 12-hour gigs in those clubs, they really improved because they had to play everything and they had to make a show for the crowd. So the Reaper band, but it was a real eye-opener for British teenagers to go to the Reaper band, probably the most X-rated place in Europe. Cellar full of guys by liking them. And this is neat because that is on the ferry, Mersey ferry in Liverpool. And they faked up all this stuff, which is really neat. And then they showed the Shea Stadium. And I love when you see Shea Stadium later, C-H-E, Shea Stadium.
Named after the famous Cuban freedom fighter.
Shea Stadium, yeah. Because that's what he says, named after Shea Stadium, the famous Cuban. Now, the girls, they actually went to Liverpool to film this stuff, and Neil Innes said to these girls, they were throwing themselves at the cars and getting hurt and throwing themselves at the actors, and they said, it's only a movie, you don't have to take it so seriously. They went, oh no, this is great fun. This is great fun. They were loving it because they didn't get to do it for real for the Beatles. And then the first Mick bit is pretty good, and it's him talking about songs. So I think I've got that clip.
The one for that was Dirk, really. He was a real hustler for the songs, I think. Always wanted to sell a song, for anyone didn't want any old slag, he'd sell a song to write one, sit up. They came down and we were trying to rehearse, and they said, do you want a song? We said, yeah, we're always really open for songs, because we didn't write our own. And of course the Rutles were always well known for their hit-making potential, ability. Right. And so they ran around the corner to the pub to write this song and came back with it and played it to us. And it was horrible. And so we never bothered to record it.
Now, Mick protests too much because in reality that's what really happened. The Beatles wrote, John and Paul wrote I Want to Be Your Man for them, sitting in the corner of the studios when the Stones were recording, and they did record it, and it became their first hit single, something that they've tried to live down to this day. Their first hit was written by the Beatles. They did play it on their 50th anniversary gigs, I believe, just as for some fun. But that's so on the nose again, And there's the Royal Command Performance spoof, which is one of the major steps that the Beatles had on their way to fame before they went to America, and it made them the biggest act in Britain, equivalent of being on Ed Sullivan, of course. But so they've really nailed this stuff. They've got the suits, they do the press conferences with the banter. Mick is high as Mick. I think he was, David. I think Mick was pretty high there. And this is them going to America now. And this mirrors, again, the footage of them in the car listening to Murray the K in the radio. And then Bill Murray the K. And this is a funny bit I've always thought, because later on they talk about the introduction of mystical tea. Well, they're drinking tea here. This whole hotel scene. I guess the continuity wasn't right, and they didn't want to scrap this scene because tea was meant to be an illicit substance. Then I think there's a Paul Simon sequence here where he talks about them being on Ed Sullivan. Now, I've seen Paul Simon, an interesting guy, because does anyone remember the He did the. I'm going to hide it. Paul Simon did a SNL sequence where he dressed as a chicken. Does anybody remember that? Am I the only one that remembers that? And they're trying to get him to sing some serious song, and like still crazy after all these, and he's in a chicken suit. So maybe he's got a sense of humor. I don't know. But yeah, they got Ed Sullivan saying the Rutles, and then they lead into Hold My Hand. Yeah, David remembers that scene. It was a whole show where they had Paul Simon dressed as a chicken. Yeah, and Paul's stuff is quite serious in this. He plays it very deadpan, whereas Mick, I think, is chewing the scenery a bit. But here we see...
Davina said it was a turkey.
It was a turkey for Thanksgiving. Thank you. I distinctly remember seeing that. Now, this is... At the time, there was all this serious discussion in Britain about the Beatles' music, and they had professors expounding on the Aeolian cadences and Mahler-like influences. So they spoofed it by having this professor, English professor, slamming the door on them when they asked him about the Rutles music. And then, of course, they had to go to Stanley J. Cramerhead III in the University of Please Yourself, California. Luckily, we have that clip.
Stanley J. Cramerhead III Jr. is an occasional visiting professor of applied narcotics at the University of Please Yourself, California. He is also a keen historian of pop music. We asked him just how good musically were the Rutles.
Listen, look it very simply. Musicologically and ethnically, the Rutles were essentially empirical mélanges of a rhythmically radical, yet verbally passé and temporarily transcended lyrical content, welded with historically innovative melodical material, transposed and transmogrified by the angst of the Rutland ethnic experience, which elevated them from essentially alpha exponents of, in essence, merely beta potential harmonic material, into the prime cultural exponents of Aeolian cadenzic cosmic stanza form.
But he didn't really tell us either.
It's inspired, but also extremely prophetic, I think. Love that performance by Eric Idle there. Especially the snort at the end.
Yeah.
And then there was this whole weird sequence where they went to the banks of the Mississippi, which is an actual bank. Because they did this in documentaries, where they would go down and interview, black guys in the South about white groups that were influenced by them. But these guys both turn out to be guys that are influenced by the Rutles. They've even renamed themselves. I learned everything I knew from the Rutles. And then his wife comes in and he's giving him shit for every time they make a documentary about a white guy, you're out there doing whatever.
Yeah.
It's weird, but it fits the mockumentary thing quite well. It does make a little bit of a diversion from just showing Rutle clips, So there's the Hard Day's Night spoof. All extremely well done. Moody Blues sang Timothy Leary's Dead. Yeah. Yeah, he had the Coke Blade necklace in that one. That's true. The Stanley J. Cramerhead III. And then this spoofs Leggy. He's getting ripped off in business, and it spoofs Brian Epstein, who made some of the most terrible merchandising deals in history. To be fair, nobody had ever done it before. But he offered up the Beatles will have to take at least 5%, when they could have been taking 95%, and they would have still got the deal. So therefore, tons of crap went out there in the 60s with the Beatles name, and there's the whole Brian Thigh thing. Ex-record executive. But yeah, Dick Rowe turned out okay in the end. As somebody in the chat said, his son's doing pretty well, or did pretty well. Then you got the Living in Hope piece where Barry gets his song. Because I'm living in hope. And then there's the whole wedding sequence where apparently chaos ensues and he ends up marrying the tall, leggy blonde, not his wife.
That's okay. The woman he was supposed to marry ends up marrying a group of Scottish
Scotsmen from Hull, which is in Yorkshire, which was the solo record Barry made, when the girl of your dreams ends up in the arms of some Scotsman from Hull. But he starts looking sad, then he looks at her and he gets, okay, he's happy. He gets the better of the deal. She's left on her own. And then the Scotsman from Hull turn up. So everyone's happy. I think she's a bit tall. And then their second movie, Ouch, which was a title Eric Idle suggested. Yeah, Tom Parker made better deals than Brian Epstein did, I believe. Although in the end, Brian Epstein had the right idea and that he just wanted the Beatles' name out there. So he didn't care so much about the percentages. And to a certain extent it worked because Beatlemania was huge. Now here's where he's outside Shea Stadium, and there it is indeed, Shea Stadium. I've been at the real Shea Stadium for baseball before they knocked it down. I had to go before they knocked it down and made a special effort. Ouch. Ouch, ouch. Ouch, you're breaking my heart. So they've conquered America. And then the whole Beatles are bigger, Rutles are bigger than God. It's controversy. Because of something Ron Nasty said. But he clarified he was actually talking about Rod, who of course wouldn't be big for several more years.
Yeah.
I know there's all this. Neil does a great job acting all this stuff. He really is. And then Bob Dylan introduces them to the substance that would change their music forever. Tea. Can you buy shea butter at Shea Stadium? I don't know. And then, of course, tea caused them to explore music and release the millstone in pop history that is Sergeant Rutter's Darts Club band. It became a millstone. Could have just played the whole movie.
Yeah, their song, I forgot what the title is, but it sounds like Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds.
Yeah.
During this sequence.
Yeah, what is that song? It's time. Hang on, I'll tell you what it is in a second. I'll let that keep playing. So the song is... Oh, here it is. What was on Sergeant Rutter's?
Good Times Roll.
Good Times Roll, which is the one he'd originally done on Rutland Weekend Television as Rock and Roll Children. It's called Good Times Roll, yeah. But if you look at the cover of Sergeant Rutter's, I'm going to pause this and then share my other screen because I've got all the album covers. So not all of these got recorded, but I do love the song titles. So you've got Tragical History Tour. This is a Tragical History Tour, not Sergeant Rutter. The Fool on the Pill. Lying instead of flying. Blue Gay Way. Your Mother Should Go. And I Am the Waitress.
Cuckoo Cuckoo.
Cuckoo Cuckoo. And then Hello Get Lost. W.C. Fields Forever. Denny Lane instead of Penny Lane, which is of course a joke, Wings joke. Abby, You're a Rich Man, and All You Need Is Lunch. That was the Tragical History Tour tracks. Sergeant Rutter tracks, I'm not entirely sure, but if you look at the tracks that were on the actual album, this is the expanded version, but Goose Step Mama, Number One, Baby Let Me Be, Hold My Hand, Blue Suede Schubert, I Must Be in Love with a Girl Like You, Between Us, Living in Hope, Ouch, It's Looking Good, People are strange in Double Back Alley. So you've got you get your Penny Lanes and you get your other stuff like that. Good Times Roll.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, which is slipped in just a little bit. Love Life, which is the All You Need Is Love spoof. Piggy in the Middle. Do a Poo. Another Day. Cheese and Onions, which we're going to get to later. Get Up and Go, which is the one they left off the original album because it was just too close, too on the nose. And then Let's Be Natural, which is more of a White Album era thing. So the song titles were brilliant. Yeah, I mean, some people probably did think they were the Beatles. You could listen to I Must Be in Love on the radio and go, that's the Beatles.
There's a lot of their songs that are really close.
Oh,
and stylistically, it's spot on.
Oh,
but
absolutely,
it's just like you're from another dimension, and everything's slightly different.
Yeah, the process that Neil went through writing them, he says that when he knew he had to write them all, he did not listen to the Beatles. He wrote them from memories of listening to Beatles songs and the experience it gave him, so that he wouldn't just directly rip them off. But when they went into the studio, they then said, what is this one going to sound like? This is roughly a Penny Lane one. What's it going to sound like? It was weird. It's a mockumentary, but is it a pastiche? Is it a tribute? Now that's where they're introduced to the Sultan,
mystic from Surrey,
the Surrey mystic Arthur Sultan, who introduces them to tea, tapping of the board, tapping of the Ouija board. The Surrey mystic, yeah. It's one of the weirdest because you can never quite tell. And I know the Beatles themselves, George loved it, of course, but Ringo and John were a bit more, well, some of the later stuff's a bit too on the nose. Paul didn't really like it much until Linda said she loved it. And then he got on board. But yeah, George was the one that was enthusiastically behind it. Even he at one, so this mirrors the thing, because the Maharishi in India spent his time trying to chat up what was her white the actress's sister that went, the one Dear Prudence is written about her. Can't remember and they thought he was a little bit too hands-on with some of the girls, so that's what they're showing here. And they thought it was a little bit on. Even George at one point, Neil said, George, Eric and I were sitting around the table talking about the songs and making the thing, trying to make some of it. And George had a guitar and he's just sitting fiddling about it. And he looks up at one point and goes, you're going to do that? He says, we were the Beatles, you know. So and then he went, what the hell? Was it Jane Seymour? Mia Farrow. Sorry, David's got it. Yeah. Mia Farrow's sister was who Dear Prudence was written about. And apparently the Maharishi was a little bit hands-on with some of the girls, including her. So anyway. I just love that. He's got his crew around him as well. And this is the bit where Leggy takes the teaching post up and it does parody the actual press conference they held with the Beatles at the time. They're like, well, I'm shocked and stunned. And then, because without Leggy, things go downhill rapidly. Dirk decides he wants to be a movie director. And they do the Tragical History Tour, which was so close to the real things. They have some of the same people on the bus. Everything is the same, you know. And of course, the Bonzos were in Magical Mystery Tour, so Neil Innes was in all of it, a lot of it. And there's the glider one that scared the shit out of them because it came really close. They weren't expecting that.
Was the glider actually supposed to be there, or?
Neil says, I don't know if it was meant to happen. I mean, somebody must have arranged it. And it was down and then went up like that. And it was maybe 20 to 50 feet away. It was really close. and it scared the shit out of them. But they've even got the Fender bass that Paul used. They've got the same costumes and everything. And I always thought that was weird. And you know, the Your Mother Should Know sequence where they're in the suits and they're doing the walking down.
Yeah,
that was one of the weirdest Beatles sequences ever. And then Rutlecore,
which is a parody of Apple.
A parody of Apple, yeah. And the whole thing about it losing money hand over fist and people stealing stuff, and that's where George makes an appearance interviewing Eric Manchester as the guy stealing, because Apple did get ripped off. Everyone was stealing money. It was losing money like nobody's business. And I think I've actually got this clip. So let's play this clip of this George in, and that's a Beatle suit he's wearing. He dug an actual Beatle suit out the cupboard. He said, I did have trouble getting the trousers on, though. Clips for broadcast. Here we go. So this is the scene. It's great, a real Beatle in it, you know.
There have been continued allegations that Rutlecore is going bankrupt. Eric Manchester, the Rutles press agent, are these allegations true?
No, they're conjecture, you know. They're sort of rumour. I think you find that where you get success, you'll always find this sort of rumour. No.
So the stories of the theft, they're not true also?
No, they're greatly exaggerated, it's bad, you know. Things are going. But nothing like the rate that people indicate. The trouble is that people feel because these boys are the Rutles, people can come in and just help themselves to whatever they want, and this is just not on. And we're putting a stop to this, and we are doing, you know, it's almost dried up. Things have gone. I won't deny it. Television sets, the odd car belonging to the company has disappeared, but it's not extreme, you know. Although I did come in once and find that my office had been nicked. But it had been nicked by Ron Decline, who we'd called in to stop this sort of flow of goods from the building, so that was all right.
Oh. So once you see this stopped, you feel that Rutlecore will continue into the future?
Absolutely. I feel that once we put a stop to this sort of bit of petty pilfering, Rutlecore will last for a very, very, very...
It's great. Yeah, I love the stuffed bear.
Yeah.
I love the stuffed bear.
Well, just the stuff they, you know, like the bed frame and then the sousaphone. You're like,
and I love the fact he says, "Well, my office was nicked, but it was Alan Klein that did it." And he actually said Alan Klein. I don't think he said Ron Decline. I think he actually said Alan Klein. I might be wrong, but the Russell logo at the peeled banana. Phones were all owned by British Telecom then. Phil, they were owned by the post office before that, before British Telecom was formed. That old, rotary phones. Ad breaks have been appearing. YouTube have changed something on live streams. I haven't looked into it. I got something and I set it to the most conservative setting possible, but it's still obviously putting them in there. If it's monetized, they're going to put it in there. So my apologies for that, guys. I've tried to make it the minimum possible. I mean, I can't miss my 30 cents a stream, you know. Anyway, back to...
Got to buy those packets of sugar for your tea.
That's right, for my tea, to just, you know, take the edge off. Yeah, it's the YouTube. You can set it to say, I want as few as possible, but it will still give you them. Yeah, Brian didn't have a great background finance. He was running a record store and a furniture store in Liverpool for his family. He wanted to get into music. So he did make some bad decisions. I mean, the Beatles at one point were nearly bankrupt, and it didn't help that they formed Apple and threw all that money away. However, in some ways, he was also the right guy for them because he worked really hard at promoting them. So there's Ronnie Wood.
Yep.
And he beats somebody up because there were bikers. John invited all these bikers to Apple, and then they're losing so much money that Ron Nasty blows up the Rutlecore building, Rutlecore boutique, because it was losing so much money. So Linda, the story is, let me So they were losing all this money. John wanted to bring Alan Klein in, who managed the Stones for a while, and to try and sort shit out. And he had a personal friendship with the guy. Linda's family, the Eastmans, were also high-powered lawyers and accountants, and Paul wanted to bring them in to sort Apple out and sort the Beatles' finances out. After Brian had died, there was no manager. I mean, they were just kind of managing themselves. It was all gone to pot, literally. And because Alan Klein won out and the other, George and Ringo, sided with John, Paul basically, the big difference, as Neil Ashwell said, was Paul was no longer at Apple. You never saw him in the building after that point. And it was just a battle between the two sides. So, yes, the Eastmans represented Paul, but the other three were represented by Alan Klein. Eventually, I think they came to realize Alan Klein was not the right guy either. But it was too late by then. They'd split up, and it took years to sort that stuff out. But anyway, now they're into Yellow Submarine Sandwich, and that possibly their high point in musically, Cheese and Onion. Because I've always thought in the back of my mind, cheese and onions. And do I have to spell it out? And I think they even got the same animators to do this.
Yeah, it's really spot on if it's not.
It's spot on for the animation, the style. It's beyond parody. I mean, it's homage more than parody. Really brilliantly done. I wish I could have played more of it, but the music, you know, I love that. I love the teeth on the. Well, it's meant to be a dish covering them. It looks like boobs, obviously, and then they tear it off at the end. And then there's the dunk of the one note. Brilliantly parodied. The funny thing about Yellow Submarine, the original, was that the Beatles were like, oh God, this is going to be awful. We really don't want anything to do with it. So it's not their voices. It's Lance Percival and a bunch of other British actors do the Beatles' voices in the movie. The Beatles only appear at the end in the All Together Now section. And the only reason they did that, I mean, obviously they wrote and threw some songs at it. The only reason they did it was the test screenings were really well received, and it looked like it was going to be popular. And they went, oh shit, we better have our faces on it. Because at first they were like, oh God, this is going to be terrible. So they went, oh, it's actually quite good. We better get involved again. So they didn't want to do their own voices. Now, I love this sequence because it's Dirk with the French actress Martini, who doesn't even speak French. Their wedding was in Spanish, German, and Chinese, just in case, because she couldn't. But this whole bit where he's trying to write a song, I've got this clip and I'm going to play it. It's because I've always loved it because it's kind of mocking the cheesy McCartney stuff.
Yeah.
So let's play this.
Dirk had become enamored of Martini, a French actress who spoke no English and precious little French. When they married in London, the service was conducted in Spanish, Italian, and Chinese to be on the safe side.
Hugh, I love you, I love. It's you I love. Today is our wedding day. For you always I will wait. G, B, D, E, F. D. 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 D, 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 D. D, 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 da, da. D, 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 D. D, 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 D.
I've always loved that when she says D, and you think he's writing the chord down, and he just starts doing D, 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 D. And that's vicious. If you think the John and Yoko stuff's vicious with the chastity and all that, that's equally vicious to Paul. I think that's why they were it's a bit on the nose, you know. Yeah, I love that one. D, 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 D. So it's and there she has to pick him up to take him through the door. And we've already shown the pretentious gallery stuff, but I love the auto-destructo art. Because that's, again, John met Yoko at a gallery where he had to climb a ladder and there was little things on the top of the word yes. And that was art. That was the art, you know?
Yeah, it's very subtle, but Chastity has a fate toothbrush mustache.
That's right, yeah. And because it does say her father invented World War II.
Yeah.
And then there's one of the bizarre Yoko movies, and it's you need feet to do whatever. I didn't bother cutting that piece of music to play. Yeah, thanks everyone for being here. I can see you all in the chat. I appreciate your comments very much. I hope you're having fun. You're always here, and I do appreciate it. Thank you. Because we do these quirky little shows here where we talk about this quirky stuff. Stig with Penelope Tree, but I love the bit there where they get into Stig hadn't said a word since 1963, so rumors started to appear he was dead. And then it says he was far from dead, but he wasn't far from Esher. Where he takes up with where he had taken up with Gertrude Strange, a biologically accommodating, large-breasted American girl. Shabby Road. There she is, Gertrude Strange. Which kind of mirrors, I mean, George married Patty Harrison, who was in Hard Day's Night as one of the schoolgirls in the train sequence. Large-breasted model, you know, albeit British, not American. But he had a type, obviously. But yeah, he spent a year. They thought he thought he was dead. And the Shabby Road thing they showed, he's got no trousers on and all that.
Yeah, which is French for death or something like that.
That's right, French for death. I don't know what the mine was. I can't remember.
Oh, her father developed the limpet mine.
That's right. Yeah, welcome to Esher. He was far from dead, but not far from Esher, which is part of London. It's a London suburb. And then they had the whole Barry thing. He spends a year in bed for tax purposes.
Yeah, they joke about he wanted to start the rumor that he was dead.
That's right. He was annoyed that it was him. And then Chastity, and then Alan Klein, Rhonda Klein comes in. It's just, I really like the way they worked the Saturday Night Live people into it. I mean, this was a great use of Belushi. There's a guy hanging himself.
Yep.
Frightening. He was frightening. And he even gets his own guys. And that's where he does the whole monologue to the camera. And then they're talking, Ron Manchester there's talking about the lawsuits, because at the time of Let It Be, it was lawsuit a go-go. George is suing Paul, who's suing John, and then they're suing Alan Klein, who's suing the Eastmans, who's suing... They're all suing each other. It was actually like that. It was that bad, where they were making Let It Be. And then they show the sorry, what did you say, Christian? Oh, this is the infamous black hole of Savile Row where 200 lawyers or something go in and only 80 come out because they were dying all over the place. Yeah, they let her go there. Yeah, Patty Harrison goes to Eric Clapton. Layla was written about her. The plastic mat under my chair has more talent than Yoko. Poor Yoko. I don't think I ever heard you this much 70s. What, the talking? Yeah, I'm doing a lot of talking today. It's only me and John, so we're holding the fort. The whole Yoko thing, what a lot of people don't know is that Yoko made a play for Paul first. Because she used to go around to his house in St. John's Wood with lyrics and stuff and trying to give them, because he had girls going around there all the time doing that. When he showed no interest, she then latched onto John. And they had a mummy complex and all that. Yeah, I mean, Christian's laughing, or I should laugh. Ha ha! Ha ha! Alan Partridge, knowing me, knowing you. Ha! You know what I'm talking about, John.
Yeah.
Rolling the ball. And then they did the rooftop concert for Let It Rot. Where I love the bit at the beginning, I didn't show it here, where Ron kicks a guy off the roof. He's bending over doing it and he boots him.
And it really looks like the rooftop concert, though.
It does. It's extremely close. If it's not that building in Savile Row, it's very close to it. And of course, we've had Kevin Harrington on this show, who was there with the Beatles as the roadie. So Christian's $2 super chat. Laugh. You never laugh this much on streams. Does that mean I don't, or I am laughing? I can't. I don't speak French, Christian. I'm sorry. Just kidding, mate.
Yeah, I don't speak Canadian either, so that's a little hard.
It's a Laugh. One of my favorite Hall & Oates songs. It's a Laugh. That's a great track. Well played. We're going to play something for Christian. I don't have his normal ones. What am I going to play? Well, it'll have to be this.
You have our gratitude.
Thank you, Christian, for that $2 super chat. Appreciate it very much, mate. You're a good friend.
Always a classic.
Always a classic. Yeah. It's a Laugh. I think it's on the album Along the Red Ledge. Great Hall & Oates album from the mid-70s. We're going to do a Hall & Oates stream eventually. Yeah, maybe Darius will come on that one. Private Eyes. That's our favourite track. Kevin Harrington was not there for the Rutles, although he did have connections to Stackridge and bands like that who were very close to the Bonzos. So we're addicted to music. Yeah, I mean, I hear titles of tracks everywhere. I'll hear Hall & Oates tracks. I won't hear the track. I'll hear a line that reminds me of a Hall & Oates track. Hell, I was in the bloody swimming pool recently having a swim, and they had the radio on, and Private Eyes came on. So I was like, yes. So yeah, Let It Rot was the end of an era, end of an ear hole. The dream was over, but they just gave it one last. Because in reality, Shabby Road was recorded after Let It Rot. And then they all went to do their solo stuff. Stig did All Things Must Fall, and had the hit with My Sweet Rot. And they all had. There's a whole, and this is what I love about the Rutles. There's a whole fan thing of things they did after.
Yeah,
including album, the mocked up album covers. Dirk forms the Punk Floyd. Because Paul liked to keep up with the trends, and Ron becomes a recluse, and Barry gets his two salons, and Stig famously becomes an air hostess for Air India. And then this is the weirdest bit at the end with the Gilda Radner sequence. I guess they felt they had to work her in somehow, and he keeps pestering her to talk about the Rutles. She says, I've never heard of them, until he slaps her, and then she knows everything about her. They can't shut her up. And then the final sequence was once again, Eric gets run down by a camera. And that was it. All you need is cash. Oh no, there was that little bit at the end. The little tiny bit at the end. I think I might even have clipped that. Did I clip it? Oh, I thought I'd clipped that bit, and I don't. Oh, maybe I didn't upload it. I'm gonna go looking for that. Hang on. Talk, John.
Okay.
While I'm looking for it.
Yeah, this is peak. Well, parody. I mean, it's got to be. You got to consider it a parody. Just because the songs are so close to Beatles songs, and they're doing everything that the Beatles did. But it's probably one of the best parodies you'll come across.
It was one of the best, and I'm struggling to think of others. There must have been others before, but I'm struggling to think of one that was this good and this well known in 78, 77, 78. because Spinal Tap's later. I can't really think of one.
Was it Spinal Tap like 86?
So I know what happened. I did have the clip of Ron. So at the end, Eric Idle asks Mick Jagger, "Do you think the Rutles will ever reform?" And he goes, "Oh, I hope not."
I hope not.
So and after, so All You Need Is Cash was shown in that hiatus for SNL. And it wasn't a success. I mean, it got pretty low ratings, one of the lowest rating on the night. So kind of fizzled out a bit in America. I think it was shown in the BBC in 1982, not long after, and it got more traction. I mean, the album, as a result, did quite well. I guess the British audience just kind of got it a little bit more. And the album was put out, had it, that Must Be in Love had a bit of a hit. And then it's like all these things, it had a life of its own. It was the weirdest thing. It just kind of created this it would never go away. So Eric and Neil would do panels about it. They'd be asked to do other stuff. I just want to share my screen briefly. So there we go. So, as well as the stuff that we saw in the show, all the great parody album covers that they did for the show, Dirk and Stig did a single called Ginganguli, which I wish I had a copy of on 7-inch. It's as rare as hell. Not quite sure why, but they did it. You got all these great covers mocked up, because this wasn't in the, people mocked up singles covers. Hold My Hand and Goose Step Mama. Oh, speaking of that, I'm going to end the poll. 28 votes. We will end that poll right now, and then we'll get it to come up, and we can see what the result was.
I would like to see them issue a remaster in 2028 for the 50th anniversary.
Oh God, yeah. So, favorite Rutles rocker, early rocker. Well, Blue Suede Schubert came in at number one, 46%. My personal favorite, Goose Step Mama.
Me too.
My favorite, only got 28%. Second, Get Up and Go, 21%. Third, and then number one, which was the early audition track that they did, only got 3%, which is probably one vote. 28 vote. Thank you for voting in that. I personally would have gone for Goose Step Mama. I am looking for my batch of extra votes so we can change that. There's a late batch of mail-in votes are going to come in. So we will never play the horse clip here, even though I am part of the Cotton Council. Never, unless someone donates big money. I mean, yeah. big money. So Deface the Music. I have that album. It is a Utopia album where they did it as complete Beatles parody, if you like, but the song stood up on their own. I just want to touch you, and I'm going to touch you now, whatever that track was. I've got that album, and also the Smithereens did a great one. There's been a bunch, but to combine it with the visuals and comedy was the trick of this one. It wasn't just the music, it was the comedy.
Yeah.
I mean, love, Rutles, I Must Be in Love cover, Let It Rot, Living in Hope. People mocked these at Parlour Phone with an OU as opposed to Parlophone, which was the Beatles label. Love Life. Please Rut Me. And this was the cover of the first British album, not the American versions, but Britain, it was Please Please Me. This is stunningly close, but Please Rut Me, with Rut Me Do and 12 other songs. The Fabulous Rutles, Ticket to Rut. Then Sergeant Rutter's Shangri-La. Now that's a real release. So Neil had originally done a song called Shangri-La on Saturday Night Live. Years later, when the Beatles anthology came out, he and John Halsey and Ricky Fattar got together with some material that Ollie Halsey recorded before he died and made Archaeology, in response, and this was the lead single, Shangri-La. And then they also did a spoof, Rutles 1 minus. We saw the tracks in it. So this is the cover of the actual Rutles album, if you can find a copy from 78. Good luck, yeah. And then Archaeology, which on its own is a brilliant album. I urge everyone to get a copy of Archaeology and listen to it. They did the spoof, all this spoof stuff of Anthology, mocked it all up. The tracks on this are just brilliant, and some of them are less of a Beatles pastiche than they are more of a Rutles, true Rutles songs. So, Hey Mister is probably my favorite. It's got a kind of a Your Blues thing going on, and it just rocks. Shangri-La. They did Baby Si Vous Play by Les Garçons de la Plage, and it's a great little rock and roller. Questionnaire is a brilliant, could be John Lennon song. Rendezvous is so Major Happy's up and coming Once Upon a Good Time band, and Rendezvous are the Sgt. Pepper and I Get By With a Little Help from My Friends pastiche. Lonely Phobia. It's just a Eine kleine middle class of music is a great track. So I urge people, get this album. Shows that the three guys, and Ollie Halsall, the stuff he left behind, they're actually great musicians. Archaeology, go get it. Yeah, and there's the third Rutles album. She Ruts You.
Yeah.
And then the picture disc, that's an actual picture disc that was released.
Cool.
Yeah. And we saw that earlier, and I think that's all the covers again.
Oh, you don't have the Weed album?
No, I don't have them all. So pretty much that was all the covers I managed to grab in the time I had. I do want to play one more clip before we wrap up, though. Again, it's a tribute to Neil Innes. I'm hoping I won't get hammered to hell by copyright for this, but this is a performance he made with an orchestra of Cheese and Onions not long before he died. It's, again, my tribute to a wonderful artist playing this. And hopefully I've got the right clip here. We'll try and play a little bit of it and see what happens copyright-wise. So this is Neil Innes and orchestra. I think it might even be at the Royal Albert Hall. The way it should be heard with an orchestra. Cheers, D-Bun. Thanks for modding and all your great work, mate. It's good to see you, friend.
There it is.
The great Neil Innes brings a tear to my eye. I love that guy.
Since I just rewatched it today, I was seeing the video in my head from all the animation. So,
the one. Yeah, David's got to go. See you later, David. We're wrapping up in a minute. Anyway, sounds like Live and Let Die. Yeah, there's elements of that in there. D. Bud Martin, thank you for wrenching, buddy, and appreciate you being here as always. And thanks to all the other wrenches, Davina, Christian, Lord Thoth. But I know D. Bud, you put in a ton of work doing that. Thank you, my friend. Yeah, I think George and Ringo sang "Ouch" once to Eric and Neil. And I think George may have done one. No, the Beatles have skirted about with it here and there. George was definitely heavily into it. We know that much. But there's all sorts of great backstory that people have filled in with spoof acts and real acts that were involved with them and records they made. But they did do tours and concerts. The Bonzos did some stuff, and then they did some Rutles stuff at the end of it. And I know Neil and Stig tried to get a tour, and John Halsey tried. They may have done a few gigs, and then they were about to do a US tour 2019, which I was really excited about. And then, alas, Neil passed away. So, but they will live on. And that song, I love the fact that song stands in its own right.
Yep.
With a full orchestra, and because it's almost, I mean, Neil Innes, if you check out any of his later interviews, he has a very interesting worldview, one which I very much appreciate. Is an Enlightenment man loved the Enlightenment era, the Franklin, Jefferson Enlightenment stuff. He loved that part of liberal Western civilization, hated globalism, and the desire to reduce everything to modernistic, internet-based, whatever. Very much an interesting guy, and you hear a lot of that in some of the lyrics of Rutles songs, as well as his own brilliant material, by the way. How Sweet It Is to Be an Idiot and all that era of solo stuff he did. Brilliant stuff.
Are we going to talk about the sequel?
Well, there was a sequel, but it wasn't. There was and it wasn't. So I do have a picture of it.
That's why I put it in quotations.
Yes. So, and I got all excited at the time, as I do. I get excited very easily. I've got it here. Hang on. I got so many folders with images in it. I must. Oh, not that one. Come on. Here it is. So at some point later, they released a second, when I had it on DVD, second Can't Buy Me Lunch.
2003.
Yeah, Rutles 2, Can't Buy Me Lunch. I do not believe there is any original material on it. It's all outtakes, leftovers, extended interviews they didn't use, bits and pieces edited together like that to make what was about another hour's worth of stuff.
Well, there's also interviews from or appearances by stars of the 2000s. Because you've got like Tom Hanks and Steve Martin and Conan O'Brien. And
yeah. It's worth having because I think it's probably even on YouTube. I mean, you can get All You Need Is Cash on YouTube for free. You can just watch it. This was probably out there too. It's interesting, but it's not as vital as the first one. All You Need Is Cash is the mockumentary. It's one of the greatest mockumentaries ever made. It stands alongside Spinal Tap as the top two. And both did that great thing where they created an ethos out of something that didn't exist. Spinal Tap took a life of its own on after. So did the Rutles. So yeah, Can't Buy Me Lunch. But for me, Archaeology is the real follow-up.
Yeah.
And then I love this. Punk Floyd. And then people mocked up stuff like this. Mind Games. Ron Nasty instead of Mind Games. There's a whole load of these out there. They're brilliant. He's standing in the minefield. It inspired a lot of fan stuff, which is And it was doing that at the early days of the internet. That stuff was coming out. So
yeah,
devoted fan base. Anyway, John, my friend, I would deeply appreciate you being here with me today. I've loved just having the two-hander and be able to chat to you. You're obviously, I'm so glad you're here because you're a fan of this stuff. What's your feelings about it? Sum it up for me.
Well, like I said earlier, I think it's one of the greatest parodies ever made. As far as, because it's a complete parody of an entire band and their history, as opposed to Weird Al just parody songs. This is taking the whole Beatles experience and turning it on its head.
Yeah, it is. It's not a parody. It's not a homage. It's somewhere beyond that, and I think it's that confluence of having a Beatle involved and having stuff the Beatles gave them to use and then having the Pythons and having SNL, cultural giants of the late 20th century, just made it something special, And I love the fact when Neil talks, there's a lot of stuff out there where Neil and Eric talk about it. Neil talks about the music. He said, yeah, we made that, we made whatever, it was maybe Goose Step Mama, and we thought, it sounds too good, and they went and roughed it up a bit on the tape, like adding stuff to make it sound rough, because it was too good. So that care and attention in it, and the fact that Ollie Halsall was a great guitar player, he played all the bass and a lot of the guitar in it. R.I.P. to him, But yeah, a band with 2 drummers and 2 guitarists. But Davina, as you said, that Ringo and George did think seriously about forming a band and doing this stuff because they loved it so much. As for me, it's one of my favorite things of all time, which is why I wanted to do it on a live stream. I've always loved the Rutles since the day it came out. And actually, I think I heard the music before I saw All You Need Is Cash. They released the single, I Must Be in Love, and it became a minor hit in Britain. I was all over that shit because I was a huge Beatles fan. I love that Rickenbacker sound.
I really didn't discover this until the late 90s.
Yeah.
But
so it doesn't matter when you discover. People are still discovering it today. And if anybody discovered it as a result of this stream, that's a win.
Oh, yeah.
So Christian's saying, great stream. Thanks, buddy. And thank you for all support. Salty has also popped in with a stream delaying 99-cent white unicorn with rainbow hair. Oh, God, it's not horse, is it? It's not horsey. We don't want horsey. You're going to have to get a final video of some kind. For that. Go on then. I'll give you this one.
Mind if I use your phone? If word gets out that I'm missing, 500 girls will kill themselves. I wouldn't want them on my conscience. No, they ought to be on my face.
Can't go wrong with Blackadder.
Can't go wrong with Blackadder. So, thanks to everyone for their support tonight and all the super chats that people getting super stickers, Toxic, Salty, Christian, and others. Appreciate it very much, guys. Thank you to everybody in the chat in general. Davina, Andy, Eclay, Jonah. Geez, the list goes on and on. I'm going to forget someone I know. David, Glenn, Larry, Eclay. Did I say Eclay? I did. You were all chatting away all afternoon, and I really appreciate it. You make these streams such fun. And It's great to have an audience that loves this stuff and is knowledgeable about it. Appreciate it very much. Darius was there, of course. Care or not, just checking back. Apologies if I missed somebody. Emperor's NM, who came in with the boobs. I'm going to miss a few guys. I'm sorry.
Davina's always got the knowledge.
Davina's always got the knowledge, and we love that. Love you all, guys. Cartoon Man 154. I know I'm going to miss someone, and they're going to hate me for it. DJ Ronnie G. We had a whole lot of people today, some people that I've not seen before, which is brilliant. Toxic was a big supporter. Thank you, Toxic. Taylor Swift's Greater Than Disney Star Wars was here for a while. And many others, you know who you are. So on the Cult Comedy Crew, till next time, have a great time. We'll be considering what our next show may be. Somebody came up with an idea the other night, and I've forgotten what they said already. I toyed with doing Father Ted, but that's maybe a bit too obscure for some people. I don't know. But we'll think of something for the next Cult Comedy Crew.
Is it time for the young ones?
It's always time for the young ones. Maybe it'll be the young ones. If we're going to go for... Yeah, let's do the young ones. What do you think, chat? We'll do the young ones. The channel that lasts till lunchtime. I'm a legend. And all 70s needs is cash. I'll after not working for a year. Yes, I do. Because of the old... The young one sounds like a good, yeah, that would be a good one because we can get music in that one too. And next week, I don't think I'm going to be doing a show next Monday because I got so much personal stuff going on. I'm going to skip that, but the week after, I'll be returning with It's Only Talk and Roll. And I'm going to do a show about the Allman Brothers and Dickie Betts, and I will have at least 3 road managers that worked with them to talk about that.
Nice.
The great Allman Brothers, and that will be a lot of fun. And then the next Canon Film Club will be the week after that, and then we're going to do the Delta Force.
I love that movie.
Yeah, me too. So anyway, thank you all again. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'm off to watch the Dallas Stars get beaten. Probably, but you never know. So until next time, keep on rocking and stay laughing.
Are we still live?
We probably are still live.
Yes, we are.
We are. So we are going to manually end this stream. So this is what they call bonus tracks. Okay, this is the digital deluxe version of the show. Funnily enough, auto start wasn't enabled, but auto stop was, but it's decided not to stop. So we are going to end that stream manually. So farewell.